Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I'm just going to start by saying go blue.
There we have it. Dude, it is, I don't know.
Can you guys see that out there? Is that coming in clear?
Oh boy, he's got the blue Kool-Aid.
This will be what I'm sipping on every evening now for.
That's a nice touch
for the foreseeable future. Really,
that is a nice touch. I did not know Chris was going to do that. We were talking for a handful of minutes before we went live, and he breaks out.
I'm full of surprises.
He breaks out the blue Kool-Aid. Listen, man, I put up an article just 15 minutes ago before we got on here about the three most interesting things Jim Harbaugh had to say today. We saw Harbaugh today. We saw Mike Sainristil today. We saw Cade McNamara. And we also saw Mazi Smith, which was cool. And yeah, man, I mean, I'm probably not slurping the Kool-Aid quite as much as you are. I mean, we see eye to eye on a lot of things. I'm still at 7-5. You're still at 9-3. We're 6 days away from the first game now, where we'll be able to really see if we're off base or if we're on the mark. But I mean, I still find myself pretty encouraged by what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from the players and from Coach Harbaugh. And, you know, he said a few things today that I was like, okay, I can get on board with it. The one I think that stuck out the most to me was about the defense communicating maybe more than he's ever seen before. And the reason is because I just don't think that's something you can make up. Like that's not something you can really fudge. Like you either hear communication or you don't. Like, you know, Jim Harbaugh can come out and say, you know, I don't know, Cade McNamara is doing everything to be a great leader. Like, that's really vague, and we don't really know. And I guess we don't really know how much communication is going on either. But, like, you either hear people talking on defense or you don't. Yeah. So I think for him to say that means that that's probably happening, and I wrote about this. I mean, when you've got a guy at the front level in Aiden Hutchinson, captain, senior, a guy like Josh Ross, at linebacker, captain, senior, and a guy like Brad Hawkins, not a captain, but as experienced as anybody on that defense, you've got some continuity there. You've got some confident veteran players that don't have a problem speaking up and talking. So I tend to believe him when he says that. And, you know, he talked about Cade McNamara being the starter. We will get into that a little bit. And, you know, he also talked about, you know, a problem that Michigan's had, which is letting the other team score first. And he said that it's been a point of emphasis this offseason and that they've addressed it and they're trying to change some things in the way that they practice and they're trying to fix it. So I don't know. He spoke for about 15 minutes. You know, his spirits were high as they have been all offseason. I know I just put that up not too long ago. I'm assuming you at least glanced at it. You know, thoughts from Harbaugh speaking on the first Monday of the season, we will say, as it is now officially game week.
Well, it's more of the same from what we've heard all off season. It's been the theme has been pretty consistent. And I think if you were to try to pick out, you know, the biggest story of the off season, I would say it's, you know, the juice, the energy, the culture, whatever it is. And it seems like, and I've said this before, every time somebody from Michigan, whether it's a player or a coach, steps to the podium, the conversation, you know, at some point goes to energy and culture and things of that nature. And, you know, when you look at years past, guys like you and I think we've talked about the fact that, you know, and we're speculating, but you look at a talented Michigan team and you say this team should be performing better than they are. And then you start to look at some other things. Is it player development? Is it culture issues? And I think that for a long time, you know, guys like you and I felt like there might be something a little bit off within the locker room. And so it sure sounds like they've found a way to fix that and make that better during the off season. And if they have, and if that's been as big of an issue as, you know, it sounds like it has been during the off season, you know, I'm highly encouraged, and that's why I feel good about that 9-3 number.
Yeah, I mean the coaching staff, the new coaches who we've touched on quite a bit, Mike Hart, Steve Klinkscale specifically, who I think are going to do a phenomenal job, and then some of the younger guys who might be who might be a little green and doing some things for the first time, but the energy and the new approaches, new things, new styles, new schemes. When you get as much turnover, when you have as much turnover as Michigan did, there's going to be a new vibe. There's going to be a new feel around the building. And from everything we've heard, it's been a very positive new. Now that doesn't mean that Mike McDonald, for instance, is going to call better defenses than Don Brown did. Don Brown needed to go. People had figured him out. They were exploiting his weaknesses. He didn't seem to change too much. And from everything we've heard, Mike McDonald's like the opposite of that. He's multiple. He's doing cover 2, cover 3. He's doing zone. He's doing man. He's doing pressure stunts, putting guys in tons of different spots. I mean, it sounds good, and we will see. We'll see if it is good. But I think, real quick, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this because they're not at Michigan anymore, and this isn't a UCLA or a Tennessee podcast, but Zach Charbonnet had a hell of a day. And just earlier today, while the media session was going on, Joe Milton was named the starting quarterback at Tennessee. Look, man, Zach Charbonnet was a good back at Michigan. He set the freshman rushing record with 11 touchdowns. And here's the thing with Joe Milton. This is what I'm going to say. I went and saw this dude when he's in high school. I was enamored with his size, his arm strength, his athleticism, everything that you look for in a quarterback. But he wasn't very accurate, and he missed a lot of throws, and he didn't seem to really have a great grasp on the offense when he was at Michigan, and so he moves on to Tennessee, wins the job. You see a lot of Michigan fans kind of shitting on him today about that, like, oh, how bad is Tennessee that he won the job, and this, that, the other. Listen, man, there were 2 guys in charge of picking the starting quarterback for Michigan last year, and they're still at Michigan, and they picked Joe Milton over Cade McNamara and over Dylan McCaffrey. That's Josh Gaddis and Jim Harbaugh. So I think people need to remember that. Like, they didn't just give him the job because they wanted to be bad. Like, he won the job. Now, Cade McNamara is a year older, another year in the system. He's coming into the season knowing he's the guy. I think that's huge for a quarterback's confidence and approach and everything. But I'm just really curious to see how Milton does there. Josh Heupel runs a very explosive offense, and he's put up big numbers everywhere he's been and everything he's been involved with. So I'm curious to see what he gets out of Milton. But, as far as Charbonnet goes, good back, solid back, liked him enough when he was here, but Michigan's running back room is just fine. I don't know. I just saw there was so much going on about Charbonnet's 3-touchdown, 100-yard performance in the first half, albeit against Hawaii. And then Joe Milton winning the job today right as Michigan media stuff was going on. So I know you were back kind of holding down the fort, and I was texting you like, dude, get this up. Did you see this? Did you see that? What were your thoughts as you're knocking out those short stories about Cade being named the starter officially at Michigan and Milton getting the same thing down in Knoxville?
Well, it was funny because it started over the weekend when I was watching college football. And one of the games that I definitely wanted to tune into was UCLA Hawaii. I wanted to see what Zach Charbonnet was going to do. And it was funny as you're going through social media and you're watching the Michigan fans sort of respond to it. It was like, you knew that college football season was here. It was debates and like, well, we shouldn't have let Charbonnet go and he should be back here. And it was like initially I was like, Jesus, here we go again. And then I'm like, you know what? This is what I've been waiting for. We're back in it. And so, yeah, I mean, it started with Charbonnet. And look, I get that it was against Hawaii, right? I get that. But the thing that really bothers me is anytime somebody at home looks at a performance like that in the first half and says, well, that Hawaii's not really known for their defense or whatever the case is, this is still Division I college football. If you can go up and you can rush for 100 yards in the first half, that's good no matter who you're doing it against or who you are. And so I didn't want to
hold that thought. If Blake Corum has 6 carries for 110 and 3 touchdowns on Saturday
in the first half,
stoked.
In the first half, right, exactly. So, and that was, I actually think I made that point over the weekend that all things equal, if Blake Corum goes into the half or even Hassan Haskins or whoever with the same numbers that Charbonnet, we'd all be patting him on the back. And so, yeah, I mean, he had an impressive outing, and I think that's probably going to keep up for most of the year. He's part of that, that 2-headed monster out there. And, for Joe Milton, you and I are on the same page. We like him a lot. He's obviously got everything you want from a physical standpoint and a quarterback. But for whatever reason, he just couldn't put it together at Michigan. And yeah, for anybody who wants to crap on him, Michigan recruited him. The guys at Michigan elected to start him over other guys. So when you go out of your way to critique people like that, it's almost like these people don't realize that in a way you're almost kind of you're going after yourself and you're questioning, your own team's ability to like judge talent. So either way, I'm going to be paying attention to these guys. There's a lot of former Wolverines that I want to watch this season and look at how they perform for the season because we didn't really get to see it while they were here.
Yeah. The one thing I did notice about Charbonnet, and then we'll move on from those guys. I know it was Hawaii. They're not a defensive team. They're going to give up points to a lot of big time programs if they play more this year. But some of the things he was doing, the vision, the cutbacks, the quick moves, the breaking tackles, the running away from the defense. I don't know, man. He looked pretty good. Good. And look, man, like I don't know where he would rank in Michigan's running back room right now. They're not going to miss him. But again, like you said, going out of your way to crap on a guy who was at Michigan just last year and started off really strong in 2019. And again, like you said, these same coaches wanted him, build him as one of their top targets at running back. And now he's gone and he's doing something elsewhere. So anyway,
yeah.
We'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention it. We're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but like you said, it was all over social media on Saturday when UCLA played, and then earlier today, same kind of thing with Joe Milton all over my mentions and all over. I'm like, if he goes to Tennessee, and Tennessee's not going to be that good. They're in the SEC. They're going to take some lumps and they're going to have some losses. But if he throws for 3,000 yards and 25, 30 touchdowns and looks pretty good doing it, like that's going to reflect poorly, I feel like. And we'll see. He'll probably put up big numbers this weekend against Bowling Green. But we'll see what it looks like for a whole season. So anyway, just something worth mentioning because you brought up the idea about keep an eye on Charbonnet this weekend before the game even happened. And then I don't even think he saw the field in the second half because he blew up so big in the first half. So there you go. Speaking of other teams, is this whole podcast about other teams today? I guess
it might be.
We got a clown. We got a guy. This fucking guy.
You know what? I'm starting to feel bad for him a little bit.
This fucking guy.
Yeah.
Scott Frost, what the hell are you doing, bruh?
It's
Scotty Frosty.
It is rough, man. And you know what? You could kind of tell that things were going to start off rough after listening to him at Big Ten Media Days. Like, I don't know, man. I felt like when he went to the podium, he just completely sucked whatever air and energy was in the room out of there. He just
Scott.
I don't know.
Do you want to be here? Like what it felt like the whole time he was speaking in Indianapolis, and they were getting thumped yesterday or Saturday. 30-9, I think it was at one point. Made a game out of it, but weird plays, bad special teams plays.
And it was more of the same. It was self-inflicted. Yeah, it was
turnovers from Adrian
missing
Martinez.
Wide open, leaving points on the board. I mean, it's everything you've come to expect from a Scott Frost coached Nebraska team. And there was so much talk about going into this new year about the focus on like we can't beat ourselves, and then you watch the game and it's like right from the get, they're already right back at it. And so I think he said something to the effect of, it looked like the same movie, and it did. They looked like the same team, and they were one of those teams that I thought might pose a challenge to Michigan given where they're at on the schedule.
Team won't.
It's right after Wisconsin, heading into the bye week. But if that's the team that they're putting on the field this year, Michigan will be just fine.
Michigan should beat the piss out of that team. But it's week to week. I mean, that's why you see weird upsets, and that's why you see
triple overtime
teams,
with Rutgers.
Yeah, teams hanging in there against the team they have no business hanging in there with, and it is on the road. And shoot, man, Adrian Martinez, if he busts off, 2 50-yard runs, I mean, you get some momentum. You're at home. He's a senior. He's making big plays. Look, that game had me a little worried after watching them. Not at all, but that's still 4 or 5 weeks down the road. It is a true road game.
And you could see flashes of it. You could see flashes early. That the Nebraska defense looked fairly solid early. I think their linebackers were getting in. They were wreaking
havoc. They knocked Peters out of the game early.
Right. And I mean, man, think about okay, so side note. The first thing I thought of when I saw Peters go down, and I was like, shit, man, like that's like we're talking about who's going to be QB1 at the University of Michigan, and it's 2 series in the first quarter, and your starting quarterback's out. Like that's how quickly it can happen. And so I think while everybody's excited and wants to know who the starting quarterback's going to be at Michigan, and obviously it's going to be Cade, whoever that number 2 guy is, you know,
better be ready.
It can happen just like that. Just like
ready,
that.
so you don't have to get ready. That's what they say, right?
Yeah, but Scott Frost, I don't know if he can make it to the end of the season. I think that'll be a success.
I typed in Brandon Peters to see if there was an update on his injury or how long he was out for. I haven't seen that today. I don't know if it's been announced, but I saw someone said if Brandon Peters gets another medical red shirt, it's going to be great that his grandkid gets to watch him. His grandkids get to watch him play. I think he'd be a 7th year.
Yeah,
the unicorn 7th year player in college, but it sucks, man. It sucks for him. Rutgers transfer Art Sikowski comes in and leads Illinois to a win. That was kind of crazy to see too. Another kid that was recruited by Michigan for a while. Yeah, Bielema ball, man.
You know, like I don't know. I think a lot of people aren't big fans of Bielema for some reason, but I don't mind the guy. And if he can make Illinois more competitive, I'm all for it, because, you know, it's not like I like seeing Rutgers struggle. Like I'll be totally fine with Rutgers struggling for as long as they're, you know, in the Big Ten Conference. But, you know, some of these teams that have been around for a while, I like it when they're competitive, and I'd like to see them do better. So if he can get Illinois up and running, that would be just fine with me.
Bielema was a guy that I used to make fun of quite a bit, actually. Just looked kind of like a goober, and he probably went home and had like 15 beers after that win, and like, whatever, man, cool. But I was impressed by him when in Indy. I think he was he was really good at Wisconsin. So, you know, the guy can coach. I don't know if he can do the same thing at Illinois that he did at Wisconsin. I doubt it, but I'm with you. I mean, he's going to make them better than they were. I think that's already pretty apparent, and you just kind of wait and see what happens for the rest of the year. But yeah, that was TFG. Yeah. Scott Frost, 2 weeks running, man.
I mean, he might be there. He might be that dude for a good portion of the season.
They play somebody dreadful this week, like Wofford or some FCS, you know, like D3 school they play.
Yeah, I didn't put him on my pick'em list, so
yeah, I'm not keeping an eye out on that one. But yeah, that one, you know, they have to win that game by like 50 points, or people are already done with them. It seems like, you know, I saw Zach Shaw, former coworker, colleague at on the radio show that I used to be on with Michael Spath. He tweeted out, and the tweet blew up. Scott Frost would have to go 37-1 to match Jim Harbaugh's record over his next 38 games, if that gives you an idea. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is winning 69% of his games. I mean, it's not like he's, you know, elite. And Frost would have to go 37-1 to match that total. That's insane. He's been so bad.
It's a weird thing that keeps happening. Like I saw it as it was happening. You know, Scott Frost is struggling, and then all of a sudden you start to see Jim Harbaugh's name being thrown around.
Yeah, I don't know where that even came from.
And the comparison, and then before you know it, you know, the debate turns from, it was back and forth between Charbonnet and Scott Frost and Jim Harbaugh. And I mean, it hasn't been as good as Michigan fans want it to be. We all know that, but it hasn't been, you know, what Scott Frost has done during his time at Nebraska. That's probably closer to what we experienced with Rich Rod, right?
He's 10 games under 500.
There you go. So
I mean, whoa,
there is no comparison, and you know, again, close doesn't count, but Michigan was knocking on the doorstep of a Big Ten championship and potentially a playoff spot in 2016. They've been there late in the season with an opportunity. Now they can't capitalize on it, but they've been in a position to do some big things. They just can't finish. And so it's a totally different situation in Ann Arbor than it is in Lincoln.
Yeah. It was you and I were texting about that a little bit. Like, why is Harbaugh's name being brought up so much right now? I don't understand. Yeah, they're not comparable. I mean, they both played quarterback at the place they're coaching. Like, that's it. That's pretty much where the similarities end. Because Frost has been awful. Harbaugh has fallen short of what he was hired to do, but he hasn't been awful. Like, I don't think I've ever used the word that he's sucked or that he's been horrible or they're awful. I just think you make a checklist of what you want him to do when he was hired, and a lot of those boxes are still empty, and that's just a fact. It is what it is. Yeah. You know, he's winning 70% of his games, albeit most of them, a lot of them are against kind of the bottom feeders of the Big Ten. He's pretty much 500, or worse against any team with a pulse. So anyway, I don't know. We've got into all that before, but the point is he's been head and shoulders better than Scott Frost. Like there is no comparison.
Yeah,
there is no comparison to what the two are doing. So yeah, it's a big difference. All right, Chris, word association. I'm going to throw you a name. Say what you feel. Kirk Herbstreit, go.
Is it a one-word response?
Nah, doesn't have to be.
I like him.
I like him too. I do like him.
I can't help but like him.
He pissed a lot of Michigan fans off. Was that today?
He did.
His thing?
It was either today or yesterday.
So
it might have been yesterday.
He went out. I think he was on a Barstool podcast or something. So a lot of people saw it, and people are talking about it today. And I caught it just before we hopped on here. You reminded me about it, so we threw it on here. He was, I guess, talking junk about Michigan fans, but I don't really know if he was like off base. You know, he said basically Michigan fans don't seem to be quite as passionate as the fans at, I think he named 4 schools specifically. He said Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio State.
Yes.
Can you argue that hard?
No.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can either.
Michigan fans themselves, have those debates quite frequently about, the down in front crowd versus the people that want to go there and cause a ruckus. But we've seen Michigan Stadium come alive. It was that 2011 game against Notre Dame, that night game with, the Mays pom-poms and, Seven Nation Army and everybody on their feet and kind of, in unison, kind of willing the team. And it was a spectacular game, I think, in big part because of that environment, and I think you see it across the country that some of these venues like Happy Valley and Ohio Stadium, it's just such a difficult place to go and play a football game. It's such a cool environment. And the thing that sucks about Michigan is that it's an okay environment, but it has the potential to be so much better. So I agree with what he said. Where I disagree.
This is where I was going to go.
Yeah, his reasoning. He started, he said something like, they got other things going on in their life and they don't live sports.
They're running company. I'm like, that's dude, what?
Running companies. What is that? I don't.
He used a very broad brush for the reason. He really didn't even need to say any of that because I think his point was right.
It was basically saying they're elitist, sort of not interested in, they're business owners. They've got other things to go and do after the game. So they don't live and die by what happens on Saturday, like the folks in Happy Valley. But yeah. I don't think that's the case, man. We work with this fan base. We know how passionate they are. The noise level isn't where I would like it to be in the stadium, but in terms of, passion, I think the Michigan football base or fan base is as passionate as any other base out there.
So I was going to say something about this. Thanks for the comment, Dominic. Give the fan base a reason to be ravenous. Hey, dude, I mean, Penn State, they have won a Big Ten title in recent years under James Franklin. Certainly Ohio State and Wisconsin has been a lot better than Michigan in recent years. There's a reason to go crazy at those places. Iowa, you could, I don't know. You could make an argument there. They do some nice things in that crowd and with that stadium at their home games. But yeah, I think he just used too broad of a brush to come up with the reasons. I was going to do exactly what you did. I had kind of 2 chunks of his argument. One that I agreed with, the appearance and the outlook and the overall vibe of the stadium that he was describing, I thought was pretty accurate. But the reason I was like, I don't really know if that's accurate. I don't think that's true. That might be the case for some. There's 110,000 people in there, dude. Come on. Right. Not everybody in there is running a company and distracted by what they've got going on. Like
literally the exact opposite of what he said would be to say, yeah, of course, Ohio Stadium or Buckeye Stadium or whatever the hell, the Horseshoe is raucous because half those people don't even have jobs, so they can live and die by what happens on Saturday, right? Like,
Kirk, is that what you were saying?
That's literally the exact opposite of what he was saying about Michigan fans. And so, it's maybe part of the rivalry sneaking in there a little bit, but he's definitely right on that. Michigan Stadium has the potential to be a lot more impactful than it typically is.
It's the biggest stadium in the country, but it's nowhere near the most rowdy or loud. Yeah. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, you know, people who have been to a lot of other stadiums, I mean, you and I I can't wait to go to the game at Happy Valley. I think that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Haven't been there before. Haven't been to the game at Wisconsin. We're scheduled to go to that as well. So I'm excited to see some of those other venues because you hear about it. You hear the announcers on TV. You can see the energy. The camera literally shakes at some of these places. I mean, a lot of the SEC stadiums are insane, and the stuff that they do after big plays and touchdowns and the lights.
Well, we talked to Chris Hinton about it, right? Chris Hinton.
Yeah.
I brought up that 2019 game at Penn State where, they got that delayed game penalty right out of the gate. And, and I think he had said something to the effect of, he had never experienced anything like that before. And it's just some of these. I get the fan angle of, well, give us something to cheer about, but sometimes like the fan base or the environment is powerful enough to like get the win. And so, I think if anything, last year taught us how important the fan base is to the football game.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I think this will be my 8th year covering the team. My first year was Brady Hoke's last. So I've been there for that and all of Jim Harbaugh's tenure. And I was down on the field for, I think 2 or 3 seasons shooting photos when I was with the Wolverine. So I've got a chance to see it from both angles, up in the press box and then down right on the field. And there have been times where it's like you can't even hear yourself think. So it gets ramped up. It doesn't stay there very often, and it's not there every game like I think it is probably in some other places. But the one moment that stands out the most to me was that opening kickoff return touchdown by J.U. Chesson against Northwestern when both teams were undefeated and the game was really hyped up and it was supposed to be this huge matchup. And
wasn't Michigan's defense like on a shutout streak at that point too?
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah.
I was in the stands for that game. I remember that.
Yeah, so that moment of J.U. taking that kickback was, again, I've only been down on the field, I think, for 2, maybe 3 seasons. I can't even remember, but that's the loudest I've heard it. And I mean, 110,000 is loud. When everybody gets on the same page and starts doing the screaming and yelling thing, there's a lot of energy that you can feel. So yeah, it would be cool to see a little more often.
Side note, we had all those players on and we're talking about, here we are talking about energy. We're asking them all those questions. Didn't ask them about Mr. Brightside. I feel like I want to know. Like, I know where the fans stand. Like, I got into a lot of shit because I said, they need to stop playing like Sweet Caroline and Mr. Brightside at Michigan Stadium because that's not what the players are trying. Like, when you hear Sweet Caroline in a timeout,
God, I wish I had a fart.
You're not trying to like go out and knock somebody's head off after that, right? You need something that's banging, that like gets the people going. And but apparently Mr. Brightside is like Mr. Brightside and the University of Michigan are like this. But I am curious what the players think. I'm wondering if they enjoy that type of thing.
I can't.
Rather hear something else.
I can't stand that song. I don't like the Killers. I don't like the dude's voice. I don't like that style of music. I think it's whack. I think it falls in a category of like not being old enough to be like a classic and not being like, why are you playing that song? Like, that's what I think every time I hear it. And
it's a breakup song, right?
It sucks, bro.
I don't know what it doesn't even make any sense. I don't know, man. If I'm a player, I can tell you it's not what I'm trying to hear.
There have been a few heated discussions. I say heated, like jokingly heated discussions about that in the press box, and I'm walking the plank in most of those situations.
Well, Barstool UM came at me directly when I had suggested, even the suggestion of getting rid of it. Like, it's. Okay, sorry. Is that my first time singing on the pod? It might be. Anyway. It might be. It won't be your last.
It won't be my last. To close this out, are you ready, dude?
What do we got?
Well, I mean, we've got a segment. We've got a recurring segment. So we did TFG.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
This fucking guy.
We might just need to rename that to the Scott Frost segment. We'll see if he can break out of the slump this week and not be that guy. But now it's time for burning questions.
Ooh! It got warmer in here.
You guys hear the crackle? Do you hear the fire burning? Do you hear the fire? Do you hear? Are those your loins? No, that's a fire burning. That's a fire burning. Over
Spoiler alert, it's both.
over some ominous music. All right, Chris.
Yeah.
I go, you go, I go, you go.
Okay.
All
right.
We also will comment on our own question a little bit, but it's mostly, to throw something at the other guy, see what's going on. So I'll start. I will start. Today, Jim Harbaugh said, we still have 8 starting offensive linemen. That's what he said. First of all, I don't know if that's true. They might have their 5. They might be good to go and ready, and the linemen know who they are and whatever. But I do firmly believe that there was a pretty intense battle to get to that starting 5. The question I'm going to throw at you, and we may have talked about this before indirectly, but would you rather have this depth, this 8 or 9 guys, or would you rather have it be like, damn, there's my 5, let's go?
I do like it's different from like a skill position, like a quarterback position. I like the fact that they've got still a little bit of uncertainty. I think they probably know a little bit more internally than they're saying, to the media during press availability. But they've clearly got a handful of guys that they think can play really well and fill into a starting role. And so the fact that they've got that much talent and they've got that depth up there, I like that because they're going to need that as the season goes on. So I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I do feel like if you had a no-brainer starting 5, left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle, it would make it easier for Sharon Moore. And he's trying to figure it out as a first-time offensive line coach, and you still have some moving parts elsewhere, some unproven receivers, your quarterback, it's Cade, but it's not like he's an All-American candidate right now. I just feel like if you had a set 5, this is our unit, no doubt about it. And maybe they do have that. That like we both said, maybe they do know more internally than we know, but maybe they really don't know for sure exactly who's going to start or who's going to not. Is that not on a loop? Come back, burning questions.
Well, if they're indecisive because they've got a similar type of problem like they have with the running back room, then I'm totally fine with Harbaugh saying, well, we've got 8 guys that could potentially start or whatever the case is, because that's a good problem to have in the running back room. Now, obviously, Mike Hart's got to figure out how to utilize them, but every guy in that running back room is strong, and I would happily take them. So if that's the kind of situation they're working with up front, I'm not that concerned about it.
Throw a question up real quick because it goes right along with what we're talking about from Mitchell. Has a team captain ever rolled the pine like Vistardis? We talked about this. I think to me that hints at me that he's the starting center, which then makes Zinner your right guard, Stuber your right tackle. Hayes has already been penciled in as the left tackle starter. Left guard, a little bit of a battle there, but I think it's going to be Keegan. We talked about that. There's been a picture that floated around a little bit that it looked like you could see who the ones were. Because of who was on defense and where everybody was lined up at, it looked like that was the starting unit. So I'm with you, Mitchell. I think it's weird if you name a guy a captain then he doesn't even play. Like that's just kind of strange.
Unless he's kind of like Rudy, Rudy could be a team captain.
Rudy
should have been a team captain.
Never seen it, by the way. Throw that out there.
What?
Nope.
Oh my God! Are you going to throw that at me 30 minutes into the first podcast of the season that you haven't seen Rudy?
I won't watch those gold domers, dude. I won't do it.
Wow. Okay, that's a separate conversation.
Right, you're up.
First question, burning questions, Brandon. The last time I asked you this, we weren't sure who was going to be starting. So now that we know kind of what's going on, based on what you've seen so far and the offense that each player plays in, who will have a more productive season, Cade McNamara or Joe Milton?
Oh, you went there?
I went there.
You went there.
Right there. Question 1.
You know what?
Now the key part of this, I think, you got to keep in mind the offense they play in.
I was just going to say, I don't think it's indicative necessarily of who's like better or who has a better year or what team is doing better. But I think Milton's going to throw it more, and I think they're going to be behind more. So I think it'll be Milton statistically. He'll probably have more yards. He'll probably have more touchdowns. He'll probably have more picks. He'll probably have a lower completion percentage. So is that better? I don't know. When you look at the season ending, the national leaders who's at the top for passing yards and touchdowns, I think Milton will be ahead of McNamara. But on the flip side, he'll probably make more mistakes. I don't think Tennessee is going to be that good, and it could be considered like mop up garbage stats.
Okay.
That's kind of how
So
I feel.
more of everything, more yards, more touchdowns, more interceptions, more fun. Like it'll just be more of everything from Milton.
Yeah,
is what you're
and a
thinking.
lower percentage because I do think Cade's biggest strength is that he's very accurate, and I think
Yeah.
he'll complete a higher percentage.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat until I see a Michigan offense that just looks like it's humming along and a quarterback that looks like they are for sure the guy. Like we just haven't seen that in a long time. And until we see that, it's hard for me to pick a Michigan quarterback to win in a head-to-head battle to be the most productive. So I'll go with Milton for the same reasons. I think he's going to be throwing it around a lot. I think he's going to have a lot of yards. I think he's going to have a lot of touchdowns, but I do think probably completion percentage will be a little bit lower and you'll see more picks. So is that better? I don't know. Is it more interesting?
Right.
Maybe.
That's where I'm at too. All right, Chris. The definition of the word excited is very enthusiastic and eager. Are you excited if Cade McNamara is your quarterback? Are you excited about Cade McNamara as Michigan's quarterback?
No, I wouldn't. I would be excited if it was JJ or if it was Bowman. I think McNamara is the least excitable quarterback, only because I think he was the most sure thing of the group. I figured he was probably going to be leading the race. I know you and I kind of thought that Bowman, based on his experience, might be able to catch up during fall camp, but just not enough time to do it. So, I mean, to answer your question, no, I'm not excited about it, but I feel I have a sense of confidence about it.
Here's where I'm at with McNamara. So Jim Harbaugh today said that he is the starter. He's been very consistent. And this was the line that surprised me a little bit. He said he has a talent for making everyone around him better, which is the most important thing a quarterback does. And that surprised me because I've always viewed Cade McNamara as like game manager, take care of the ball, limit mistakes, move the chains, efficient, accurate, but not a lot of big plays, not a lot of home run balls, not a lot of excitement, flashy, and not as an elevator, like not as someone who necessarily takes like a receiver who only can get a yard of separation, but it feels like 4 because the quarterback is just so good, so dynamic. That's how I viewed McNamara. That's not a knock either. Like that, there's 80 quarterbacks in the country that are like that. There's only a handful of guys every year that I think take everybody on their roster and make them better. I've just never viewed McNamara that way, even when he was a recruit. I mean, we're not talking about a 5-star top 2 quarterback in the country. He's really good, threw for a lot of yards, broke a lot of records in Nevada, but I didn't see him coming in as a guy who's going to take everybody around him to another level. If Jim Harbaugh sees that and he means that when he says it, we'll find out. But I'm with you. I don't think I would go as far as saying excited about him. Like, I think you can win a lot of games with a guy like Cade McNamara.
Right.
But I don't think, he's not going to be this, anomaly season, 5,000 yards, 45 touchdowns. I just don't see him as that kind of guy.
Think. Yeah.
So
you know what? I love when this happens. When your question and then my question sort of lead right into one another.
That happened last time. That was nice.
So the question I have for you, based on what we just talked about, the transfer portal, we talked about a couple of them. We talked about Joe Milton. We talked about Charbonnet. You've got McCaffrey back out in Colorado. You got Brandon Peters, who's now done, but out in Illinois. So we know that it's active and kids don't. Go ahead.
By the way, Oliver Martin also played for Nebraska in that game, like his 15th team. Forgot he was there.
Do you remember how I told you I had another TFG, like the dink to the doink? Oliver Martin was my dink to the doink. This
what
TFG,
are you doing there?
He goes out with 6 receptions for 103 yards and a touchdown. And I didn't even know he was out there, man. So yeah, I think I saw a stat that he might be the only player to catch a touchdown for 3 different Division I FBS teams. Right?
We said that the TFG could be for a lot of reasons. Like this guy goes off out there. Who is Oliver Martin out there?
This dude, and he kind of had a swagger about him. I was like, okay, Oliver Martin.
Okay,
but nevertheless, I forgot to bring that up. But so the transfer portal is active. We know that kids don't want to sit, especially the highly rated kids. So here's my question: if Cade McNamara does turn out to be the guy, I think he's got 2 or 3 more years of eligibility based on last season because they get that free year, right? Yeah. So if Cade McNamara turns out to be solid, Does that concern you about J.J. McCarthy's future at Michigan?
I knew where you were going. God, I'm going to say no because it just goes against everything that kid is made of. Everything he's said, every way that he's conducted himself, everything he's ever said about Michigan, how he handled the recruiting process, how he recruited for his class, the stuff he talked about with us, when we had him on for an interview a few weeks ago. I just, man, it doesn't seem like he has it in him to go somewhere else. I don't know, man.
You do kind of wonder, what is it like for a J.J. McCarthy when you see a C.J. Stroud, another 5-star kid, down in Columbus, he's about to make his debut. Is McCarthy willing to sit for 2 years if Cade turns out to be that guy? With the way transfers go these days, and how important it is for guys to get out on the field. And like I said, especially when you're one of those highly rated kids, I tend to agree with you. I don't think McCarthy is the kind of kid to bolt and hit the transfer portal, but today's college football is very unpredictable.
That is a tough question because he's freaking talented and he's a winner and he's a grinder and he's a worker. Riding Pine's not in his DNA either. That's a rock and a hard place because I don't think transferring is in his DNA, but I don't think sitting on the bench is either. So
dude wants to play.
That's close. We'll see how that plays out over the next season or two. But yeah, that's a really hard question right now. We'll see how things look this year, and does Cade stay healthy, stick it out, start every game. I mean, like you said, that knock on wood, good God, you don't want it to happen to anybody, but you see what happens. Brandon Peters, a couple series in, looks like he I don't know. I didn't see the official diagnosis, but it looked like a separated shoulder or broken collarbone to me.
And we've already seen it with McNamara. We already saw it.
He's been hurt.
He played half a game, and then he made it through the first quarter of the very next game before his year was done. So we've seen it.
Alan Bowman, who's at Michigan now, has had multiple seasons cut short. Cade tore up his knee, I believe, during his true freshman season. So, dude, it happens. And so, yeah, that's a great question, man. It's a loaded one. It's one we won't probably have an answer to for quite some time, but that's one to be thinking about for sure. My third question is actually kind of similar to my first question, where I asked you, is it better to have your 5 stud offensive linemen versus this depth of 8 or 9 or whatever it is? I'm going to say the same thing about the corners. Jim Harbaugh today said he has 3 starting cornerbacks in DJ Turner, Vincent Gray, and Jamon Green. Again, would you rather just have God, that guy takes away half the field, that guy takes away the other half, let me roll it out there, they're never coming off the field, those are my guys? Or is it nice to have a little bit of a rotation where you can keep fresh legs and throw some different things at different receivers?
Get your finger ready on the button because
slurping?
No, we're not slurping. I don't want a range of people. I don't want to cycle through people at that position. I want 2 dogs out on the field that I know are going to lock people down. They're going to make it a long day for the receiver across from them. I want those 2 guys. I want Will Johnson and Damani Jackson out there locking people down. That's what I want out of my cornerbacks. And so, 3 of them, okay, if one guy isn't living up to it, you can send another guy in there who kind of feels like he's a starter, and maybe that takes a little bit of pressure off of him to come in and relieve whoever it is. But in an ideal world, I would just love to have 2 lockdown dudes at those positions.
I'm with you. I think this is the case at just about every position for me. I know you got to have bodies at D-line. I know you got to have a little stable at running back, but I still, even at D-line, that's my DN. That's my D tackle. That's my number 1 bell cow back. Yeah, he's not going to be able to carry it every time, but if I'm given 80% of my carries, I want it for that guy. In Michigan, I don't think has that because they've got a few good ones, and that's okay. Yeah, but I'm with you, man. And kind of the old adage, every year you hear it from multiple programs and camps. It's if you got 2 quarterbacks, you actually don't have any, because I think you should have a guy who steps up and is your guy at just about every spot. And so I'm with you. We saw a couple guys get burnt like toast last year at multiple times. And are they suddenly just way better and battling, and you can't figure out who the best one is. I don't know, but to me it sounds more like I don't really know if we have two like sure thing, surefire lockdown corners out there. That's what it kind of feels like to me, knowing it's the same guys we saw last year. Now, new scheme, zone, press, off coverage, cover 2, cover 3, unders, all that stuff is going to be on the table, whereas last year it wasn't. I think that helps, but yeah, we'll see. I'm with you, though. Give me 2 dogs out there to shut down the best 2 receivers for the other team.
Exactly. All right, so these next 2 questions, number 3 and number 4 that I had, we almost kind of addressed them initially, where I wanted to ask you about Zach Charbonnet and Jim Harbaugh, the comparison with Scott Frost, but I'm going to do it anyway. Sat over the weekend, watched Charbonnet, had an amazing debut, runs for 106 yards on 6 carries. I think he had that with still 8 minutes left in the second quarter, so he got there pretty quick. Were you impressed with his UCLA debut, or are you reserving judgment until next week when they take on LSU?
Very impressed. Like we talked about, you're still doing it. If it wasn't a big deal, it would happen all the time, and it doesn't. He had more production in 18 minutes of football than he did all last year. That's crazy.
Yep.
He had 106 yards. Last year at Michigan, he had 124, I think, 18 yards difference. He scored 1 touchdown last year. He had 3 on Saturday, and he did it on 6 carries. I mean, no, it was absolutely impressive. And I said it before, it wasn't just the numbers. It was what he did, the vision, the cutback, the stop and start, the power, the breaking tackles, the balance, the long speed. He's not like burner fast. He's not going to be the fastest guy on the roster. But, I mean, you – just watch that run last year against Minnesota, dude. He was out of the hole and gone. Nobody was catching him. That's a 75, 80-yard touchdown. If you can make it 80 yards and not get caught, you're fast. That's where I'm at with that. So, yeah, I thought it was impressive. And I thought, Chip Kelly at UCLA, he's always been an offensive guy. If you can do enough of the right things around, they've got a really dynamic quarterback in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He can run. The zone read stuff is going to be there for them. I think Charbonnet is going to have a big year. I don't think that was an anomaly. I don't think it was just because it was Hawaii. I think he's going to be really productive for them. I do.
I agree. And when it comes to that, I agree that he's going to be – I think he'll be productive throughout the year. But we brought it up a little bit earlier when it comes to his performance specifically against Hawaii. If Hassan Haskins or Blake Corum or anybody has 106 yards with 8 minutes left in the second quarter, 106 rushing yards against Western Michigan this weekend, I'm going to think it's pretty damn impressive, regardless of the fact that it's against the Broncos. So, yeah,
that would be a storyline in a column written by just about everybody.
Yeah,
in the Michigan market, if Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins, whoever has over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns in a quarter and a half of football, that's going to get talked about. 100%. So you can poo-poo it all you want if you think it was just because it was Hawaii and because you got sour grapes about Charbonnet leaving, but it was an impressive day. There's no doubt about it. Speaking of running backs at Michigan, I don't know if you want to quantify this with specific carries or snaps or whatever you want to do, but how much do we see Donovan Edwards on Saturday?
I think you'll probably see 5 to 7 attempts to get him the ball on, and that includes special teams play, jet sweeps, running out of the backfield, maybe even like a little wildcat thing you might see. I could see that happening.
He did a lot of that in high school.
Exactly.
A lot of that.
Yeah. So, or something coming out of the backfield, maybe he gets downfield and can catch the ball. But I think you'll probably see 5 to 7 targets. I don't think they're going to try to use him too much, but my hope is that if he starts balling out and they give him the ball and he's like lathered up and doing some things that we see Mike Hart say, I don't care that he's a true freshman. Dude's balling out. Get him out there. Let him play and let's ride it until it goes. And so I'll say 5 to 7, but if he's getting it done, let it ride.
This is also a situation where Michigan's favored to win by 17 and a half. If they're up 20, 30, or whatever it might get to, he's your third back. Do you take out the starters and let him, let the rookie go and let the freshman, work into a lather? Do we see Tavier Dunlap even? His name's been brought up a few times this offseason. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm interested to see. I think that sounds about right. We'll see. I think the situation of the game and how it plays out and what the offense looks like, how many points they're up by, I think all of that will factor in. But, yeah, he's going to play. Jim Harbaugh and Mike Hart have both confirmed he will be on the field. He's too good not to play. Yeah, that first carry for him is going to be cool to see, man. What's he do with it? How many times does he touch it? I think you're right. I mean, it sounds when you've got backs as good as Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum, they're going to be in there. I just don't know if there's enough touches to get Edwards into double digits or something like that.
Problem,
so yeah, about 5 or 7. I can get on board with that number. That sounds about right.
All right, I'm going to keep this one short and simple, Brandon. Number
Love
4. Is the Jim Harbaugh slander out of control?
This weekend it was. This weekend it absolutely was. Like we talked about earlier, like what the hell did he even get brought up? They're not playing. I mean, Michigan and Nebraska aren't even in the same side of the Big Ten. Their numbers aren't close. I think it was out of control this weekend. We talked about it last week where Feinbaum's coming out talking about firing him right now. Like, what are you talking about? This isn't firing season. Like, I know you know the calendar in college football and how it works, and guys aren't fired right now. So why are you talking about that? Like I said before, I thought Jim Harbaugh should have been gone last year. I thought his contract and his buyout reflected that they don't have a lot of faith in the guy anymore, and he hasn't won on a high enough level. But now is not when you talk about him being gone or even looking ahead to the future. That's not what you do right now. So yeah, I think this past weekend for sure it was not only what word did you use? Out of bounds or over the? What did you say? Slander?
Out of control.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Whatever.
Yes, out of control.
It just seemed very misplaced. I don't know where it came from or why it was a thing this weekend. Yeah, so I would say yes, it was dumb.
Once again, we're in lockstep with this. I have been pretty critical of Jim Harbaugh. I know you've been critical of Jim Harbaugh. We kind of had the same mindset last offseason that, based on the results and the way things had gone so far, that it probably should have been kind of the end of the road there. But he's back now, and like I've said multiple times, he's here, and I want him to succeed because his success means Michigan's success. But I don't know, man. As a Michigan fan, I have a real hard time when these national analysts like crack jokes about Jim Harbaugh when you've got, clowns like Feinbaum, or you've got, I forget who the dude was. I think he was with CBS who said that Jim Harbaugh is or Scott Frost is Jim Harbaugh with less talent. Like, it just seems to me like people are going out of their way to attack Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, he's fallen short of what we expect, but 3 10-win seasons, a 9-win season in there. He struggled in 2020, but it just seems like the slander is just a little bit too much, man. I don't get it. I don't get why his name continuously gets brought up.
Polarizing guy, he's got his history that he has. The horse he rode in on coming from San Francisco. The savior, the golden boy for Michigan. I mean, it's Michigan, it's the brand, it's. I get why you're going to talk about him more than a coach at Vanderbilt or something like that. Yeah. But there wasn't even like a connection to make this weekend, and people were trying to make it. It was strange. Yeah. All right. My last question for you, it comes from earlier today, the media session. Jim Harbaugh was rather guarded and cagey when asked about special teams. If you're the head coach or you're the special teams coach, who would you put deep to return kicks and punts? Jim says they've got it figured out. They think they know who it's going to be. He didn't want to say, but who would you put back there off of Michigan's roster?
Honestly,
yep,
I'm probably putting Donovan Edwards back there.
Ooh.
It's the easiest way to get him touches in the open field. Let him use.
You're talking both punts and kicks.
I'm talking both.
Okay.
Put him out there. You've already got a loaded backfield. You're going to let Haskins and Corum get a bulk of the carries. At least let Edwards get out there on special teams. He's got to be one of the most athletic guys on the team, one of the fastest guys on the team. If you can get him out in some open space and kind of get him some confidence and momentum, it'll probably carry over later on in the season. But yeah, I would have him out there returning punts and returning kicks for sure. Roman Wilson's another guy.
I would put Giles Jackson back. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, that's not going to happen, is it? No,
Speaking of transfers to keep your eye on.
Yeah, I would put. I think for me it would be AJ Henning. I think for me it's AJ Henning. It's a guy who he's got the running back build. He's got the receiver skills. He's very, very quick. He's very fast. He's shifty, he's good in space, gets up to top speed in a hurry. I think he's got the close to the perfect skill set to return kicks and punts. Punts for sure. I think I would actually have a different guy. I think it's two different types of guys returning kicks and punts in my head. And for kick return, that might be Roman Wilson for me. Get him on a straight line, the fastest dude you got. Get him a lane and let him go like he's shot out of a cannon. Whereas punts, you got to make that front guy miss oftentimes. You gotta wiggle and go before you can really get up to speed. That's why I want my short space quickness guy, the guy that can get to top speed in a hurry. You don't want – I always thought Donovan Peoples-Jones was a weird choice for a punt returner because he was a long strider. He needed to get galloping before he could go. But the most important job there is catching the ball. So I don't know. Maybe A.J. Henning's not great at it. Maybe Roman Wilson isn't great at it. Maybe Donovan Edwards hasn't been real good at it. I don't know. Peoples-Jones was pretty good at that. He could catch the ball. He was strong. He wasn't going to lose it if he took a hit. But in terms of making a first defender miss or getting up to speed in a hurry, that really wasn't his skill set. But he was pretty good there too. He had a couple returns. Obviously, Jabril Peppers was electric there at times. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who goes back to catch kicks and punts because Harbaugh was not letting that cat out of the bag earlier today.
Yeah. All right. This will be my final question, I believe. So NIL is here. Obviously, it's made a big impact so far in the college football season that just started. I'm curious, do you think we make it through a full college football season without there being a massive NIL controversy this year?
I do think so because I think it's like do whatever the hell you want right now.
Okay.
I just don't see anything really being enforced. I think the language and the rules are vague enough to where you can pretty much give whatever you want. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen big fat amount of money down in Miami. We've seen cars at Ohio State. We've seen endorsement. I mean, we just this weekend, DJ Uiagalelei, the quarterback from Clemson, was on a Dr. Pepper commercial. I don't think you're going to see anything because I don't think there's anything to see. Ooh, that's a good line right there. That's a good line. I just think it's all allowed, which is why it's so frustrating that Michigan is sitting on its hands and acting like there is going to be a controversy and acting like there are rules that you have to follow and acting like they're going to get in trouble for something when they're clearly not. And I'm excited to announce this little breaking news right here. Do I have my breaking news? Breaking news number?
What do we got?
I will be a guest speaker at a Michigan class on next Wednesday talking about NIL.
Wow. Look at you.
How about that? Yeah.
Quite the scholar. Quite the scholar. So if you're going to be on campus that day, check Brandon out.
Pretty excited that they let Central Michigan Chippewas on foot there to talk to everybody. But, I'm looking forward to it. It's really not as prestigious as it sounds. So Michael Spath teaches a course at Michigan. He asked me to come in and talk to his class about NIL and what we've experienced with the guys we've had on for our interviews and what we think Michigan is doing poorly and how they could do better. All the stuff we've talked about 100 times. So I'm looking forward to it, though. And there's actually going to be a couple other people from Michigan there, too. So it's like a panel kind of thing. Pretty neat, man. There's some – I'm not sure if I can say the names, but there's a handful of football players and a couple basketball players in the class. So, nice. Yeah, it should be cool, man. I'm looking forward to it. But anyway, back to your question to answer it, no. I don't think we're going to see a big bomb because I don't think that it's being not – I don't know if I can even say that it's not being policed. I don't think there's anything to police. Like, do it. It's allowed. So just do the stuff.
That's where I do have a bit of concern is because it does feel like everything's allowed. And it does feel like until there is some pushback, people are going to continue to push the boundaries and see what they can really do with NIL. So, yeah, man, it's going to be really interesting as the season gets going along and money starts exchanging hands and, the gambling's a part of it. And you've got guys that are bursting onto the scene who, weren't, I guess, preseason favorites for anything who are now, making a name for themselves. I just find it hard to believe that given how many unknowns there are with it, that we escape this first year without some sort of NIL issue coming to the front, and then people saying, "Oh, okay, here's what we've really got to look out for."
Yeah, it's going to change a lot, and it's going to be all over the place. And we're going to continue to see, like, oh my God, why isn't Michigan doing that? Why isn't anyone at Michigan doing that? And we will see. We will see, man. I was actually talking to Mike about this today because we were kind of discussing what was going to come up on Wednesday when I go to his class, and it's, Michigan still, even now, 2 months in, it's about to be September 1st. This thing went live on July 1st. Michigan could still kill it. I mean, at any point, if they just want to start letting things happen, and, it's Ward Manuel, it's the athletic directors, it's the compliance office. I see a lot of President Schlissel's name being thrown around. He doesn't give a shit, man. He doesn't. He's not a sports guy, so he's not meddling in what in name, image, and likeness is going on within the sports programs. Like, that's just not what he's doing. But there are plenty of people kind of standing in the way. And again, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to like me. You don't have to think I know what I'm talking about. But Hunter Dickinson put Michigan on blast, and that's all you really need to hear. So, I don't know, man. I just don't think that there's. I don't think that there's a rule to break at this point. That's where I fall on why I don't think anything crazy is going to happen.
Well, there is language. I mean, if you listen to, we talked with Seth when we had Seth Sugar on and we did the A2A stuff. When he was talking about some of the pitfalls that these players can run into by signing contracts or giving away exclusivity, things like that. I just feel like it might not be maybe something shady going on, but maybe a bad deal that a player gets wrapped up in that becomes controversial, where players need more protection or something to that effect. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think you'll see something this year.
There you go. Burning questions. All done.
Wow.
I'm hot. Woo. I'm hot.
I mean, should we go to the people? I see it. There's a lot of comments out there. At least from what I can see.
There's quite a few comments. There's not a lot of questions, but we'll throw a few things out there. Let me throw up just so people know what we're doing. We're asking questions now. We're taking questions now. I thought this was interesting as we were talking about. We were talking about what Zach Charbonnet did in his debut with UCLA, and people were bringing up what Chris Evans did as a true freshman against Hawaii a handful of years ago. People were pretty pumped about that back then. Granted, he was a true freshman. It's the first time we had ever seen him.
Yeah, and you know what? Look how good Chris Evans is doing in the NFL right now. He's off to a pretty damn good start. And so, I don't think Chris Evans was the issue at the University of Michigan.
I had a thought really similar to that. Like, there's no doubt in my mind Zach Charbonnet is an NFL back. And Michigan's running back room is really good, but whenever an NFL back just decides to up and leave, like, that's not awesome. So, it is what it is. Scott Frost, not a good coach. Agreed. Christy, I'm not ignoring you, but we are going to do some spread stuff later this week with the numbers and where Michigan's at. So we're going to politely ignore you at this point, asking whether or not Michigan will cover this weekend. We will talk about that. This is an interesting way to put it. Scott Frost, not a good coach. Harbaugh, not a great coach. I can get on board with that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very well.
Frost might be below that, even though Scott Frost is a bad coach and Harbaugh's not a great coach.
Which is crazy because both of these dudes, before arriving to their current destinations, were like
home runs,
hot commodities. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy.
This is an interesting one. I have to say yes. Do we think Cade should start? I have to say yes. I mean, I thought Bowman would have more of a shot coming from Texas Tech, a lot of experience, but you said it earlier. It's a lot to ask a guy to learn a brand new system. I think it would be like his fourth system because he went through a coaching change at Tech. Very different system, coming from the air raid offense to what Michigan's trying to do. So Cade's the guy. I actually had that as a part of a discussion from last time's pod. I don't think we got to it. Like, that's maybe where the lack of excitement comes from. Like, I don't know. I just don't really feel like Cade whooped ass and just dominated and won the job. I feel like he kind of got it by default. That might be a little harsh, but you've got a true freshman talented one, but a true freshman who should have just finished up high school a month and a half ago, and Alan Bowman, who's been here for 10 minutes and is learning a brand new system.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Here's where I'm at on it, and I wrote an article about it weeks back. I think if you want to win as many games as you possibly can in 2021, then you roll with Cade. But for the reasons, I asked you that question earlier, if Cade ends up being a solid starter, if he really secures that job, does it put McCarthy's future at Michigan in jeopardy? And I think it does. And for me, for my money, I would rather roll with McCarthy this year, let him take his lumps, let him learn the game so that come 2022, you're sending out a JJ McCarthy with a year of college football experience under his belt. I think that positions Michigan best for success moving forward. But again, you're not going to look at a locker room and say, all right, gentlemen, we're playing for the future here. So we're going to, this is going to be a tough season. I think Cade gives them probably the best shot to win right now. So in that sense, yeah, I think he should start. But as a fan on the outside looking in, I'm thinking I want to plan for the future.
Do you think JJ McCarthy will have a good year for Matt Campbell in 2022, though?
Heisman year, probably.
That was brought. I saw Matt Campbell getting talked a lot about, the last couple days too. I'm just like, we haven't even played the first game yet. Can we play the first game?
Dude, this fan base is just damaged, and rightfully so. Well, yeah. Rightfully so. When you go through such a long period of an abusive relationship as it is between the fans and the University of Michigan football program, it's like it's painful. It has been a painful stretch, but yeah, you could see it. First weekend of college football, Michigan's not even playing, and the debates are just raging, and like comparisons, and it was crazy. It was great. Another question. Great to have it back.
Absolutely. Another question here. Any word on Andre Selden? I actually know Andre's dad pretty well from covering the recruiting process, and he's had some nice days, some nice plays. He's flashed some good things, but haven't really heard him brought up by the Michigan coaches, of course. It's been the focal point on those top three guys, but Selden's kind of a specialist, a little more of a nickel. He's undersized, but fast, he's sticky, physical,
scrappy.
Scrappy, can make plays on the ball. So I don't know. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman. I don't know how much you're really expecting to see of a guy like that, but he's made some plays. I don't think we'll see him a whole lot. He switched numbers. He was 0 last year. And so is Giles Jackson. Now there's no zeros on the team. Andre Selden, we're number 36 now, which is his dad's former number. So kind of a interesting little thing there. I saw a picture, I think, online of Andre not in the 0. So I texted his dad. I'm like, what's up with the 36? That's a weird number. He's like, that was my old number. I'm like, oh, my bad. My bad on that.
36, that's trash.
Yeah, I didn't quite go that harsh, but I was like, that's kind of strange because he was like, I think he was number 2 in high school, and then he went to 0, and I'm like, where did 36 come from? But that was it. His dad said that was his old number. Does Cade have the arm to be the QB? Yeah, I think he does. I mean, he's not like, you're not going to talk about him as one of the strongest arms in the country or anything, but he can make the throws, and he's an accurate guy.
And Piscataway last
really
year.
Nice touch.
You can see it.
Yeah, really nice touch, good timing, throws a catchable ball, can make the throws. I mean, you're not gonna change what you call because of his arm strength. But no, he's not Joe Milton. He's not throwing it 80 yards down the field, but he can throw it. I'm not worried about Cade's arm strength at all. And he is good with the different arm angles. He's got kind of that little gunslinger knack where he can do some of the sidearm stuff a little bit, and the flips, the wrist flicks, things like that. So I like Cade's ability. Like I said, what I said about him earlier, I don't want that to come off as a knock, because it's not. If you're, taking care of the ball and moving the chains and scoring points, like, you're doing your job. I just don't think he's the kind of talent that makes a mediocre receiver way better, like we saw with Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. I mean, yes, they did have some really good players around them, but like, Cade McNamara is not going to be talked about as a top 5 pick. Like, he's just not that guy.
We don't think.
I don't think. Guess we'll wait and see, but I still think you can win a lot of games with him. You just got to hope that the rest of the stuff kind of comes together. Do I think Damani Jackson flips to Michigan? I don't, but the fact that he's coming in for the Washington game is a pretty big deal. This is another funny example. Like, Will Johnson goes out to USC and everybody's like, who cares? Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean anything. Damani Jackson's coming to Michigan, and all the Michigan fans are like, he's coming. It's flipping. means everything. It's the most important visit in the world. Like, visits mean something. Guys don't. I covered recruiting for a long time. Guys just don't take visits for the hell of it. They don't. I mean, when a guy has a top 5 and he's getting ready to take his officials, if you cover recruiting or follow recruiting, you can pretty easily say like the order or, you know, a roundabout order, but there's interest in all those schools. That's why they have a top group. That's why they take the 5 visits. So I'll say right now, no, but like, you know, if Michigan whoops Washington's ass while he's here and he's hanging out with Will Johnson all weekend and USC doesn't do very good out west out in the Pac-12, I mean, you never know. And I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Every Michigan commit too. Like if you're committed and then you see your future team, you know, laying turds every week, like you start to have second thoughts about it. That's why you take those visits and you look around. The
Damani Jacksons, the the Walter Nolans, those like those guys that you want to bring in, you've got to take care of business on the field. And so will Damani flip? I don't know. Ask me again on November 28th and we'll see what the season looks like. And if Michigan goes out and has a hell of a season and plays like, you know, if what they've been talking about during the offseason, this chemistry and this brotherhood translates into massive success on the football field, I can easily see how something like that would be appealing to a guy like Damani Jackson, especially if USC doesn't have all that great of a year.
By the way, Walter Nolan is out there like, I mean, dude, he's chasing the NIL bag so hard. He's talking about get me to this certain number of followers and I'll do this. Get me to this and I'll do that. Like, I don't hate on it, but it's, again, Michigan not killing it in NIL is one of the reasons why he's no longer considering the Wolverines.
You know what I hate on? I think he said something like, you know, he put out his top 3, but then he said, you know, just so you know, like I'm not turning off or I'm not, you know, ignoring any schools that want to recruit me or anything like that. So like
still open.
Right. It's just such a like, then why are you even putting out your top 3? You know, like I don't know. You know, I kind of got a bitter taste in my mouth after following Xavier Worthy and that roller coaster of a recruitment. And, you know, recruiting is just such a weird thing. We've talked about it before. And I know that you're going to, you know, focus on that a little bit this year, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at a comment. I'm going to put it up in a minute. Not this one. Ronnie Bell, 1,000 yards or less. I think less. That's a lot, and I don't expect the offense to be explosive enough. And I also think they're going to spread it around. You know, I don't think Ronnie Bell's the 12 targets a game kind of guy. I think he's going to be productive.
You do have him over 40 receptions.
Yes, I do. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to do a lot of good things for Michigan. He's a captain. That's awesome. But I don't think he's going to get to 1,000 yards. Chris, did I lose you over there? You're bugging out a little bit. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Losing Chris.
Is it yours or mine?
Mine's good over here, I believe. I think you're back now.
Yeah, I'm good. Nothing happened on this end.
Nothing happened over there. It was like you were tweaking, dude. Last question. This is the biggest question of the night. Katie Brown, my wife.
Is it about?
Is that my cider? You're damn right it is. Cider. You see that it says cider boys, not cider girls.
I thought you were going to ask the people if I should. Is this button in no man's land? Should I,
Oh, dude, put it away.
Should I open it up a little bit?
You see that whole Teen Wolf thing you got going on right there? You just need to wax that out. Boom.
Nah, man, that's in. That's
a little 40-year-old virgin reference for everybody who didn't catch that. You see this? This is all premeditated, partner. You see what I'm doing right here?
I'll roll out the deep V on Wednesday. We'll get it going right. Real deep.
I want to see the top of your belly button, dude. I want to see.
That's what I'm saying.
I want that out there. I'm gonna
need to push this thing way back.
I wanted it in the press box. That's where I wanted it.
This just got weird. This got a little weird. I'm gonna button my shirt back up.
That's what happens on a Monday night when we're just rolling with it. We got booze going a little bit. I like the pod, man. I think it was a good one. I like the questions. I like the answers. I'm excited. We're 6 days away from Michigan season. We're 6 days away from Chris stepping foot into that press box, man. I know you're excited about it. He's slurping the drink.
Very excited.
There you have it. We'll be back on Wednesday night. I'm really excited about our podcast layout this year, man. We're structured, we're scheduled, we're organized. It's a dangerous combo. We've been freeballing it for the whole time, and now we got a plan. Watch out.
Well, full disclosure, I'm still freeballing it, but we do have a plan.
There you go. Freeballing it with Wolverine Digest. We'll see you on Wednesday.